The euro. Is it a failure? This question has been asked many times over the last 2 decades, and a sizable group of Europeans within the Eurozone are pretty divided over the issue. In this video, we are going to explain why the euro was broken from the beginning, a project that would cause conflict between the European countries that adopted it. But in an attempt to analyze the euro situation in more detail, we will only address one aspect of the euro's failures in this video, and that is the issue with external imbalances and internal devaluation. So, without delaying the video any further, let's begin, and welcome to why the euro was doomed from the beginning. So, in order to understand why the euro has caused many Greeks, Italians, and Spaniards to leave their countries in the last decade, we need to talk about internal devaluations and external imbalances. And stay with me here, I'll try not to bore you. In short, an external imbalance is when imports persistently exceed exports. This is when a country has a current account deficit. Think the USA as an example outside of Europe. As a result of this external imbalance, a country will have to borrow to finance the difference between their imports and exports, a process made more difficult when part of a currency union of other countries, but a process that is not impossible to complete. The most common mechanism to reduce this external imbalance is through the devaluation of one's currency relative to others, as a weaker currency encourages exports as a nation's products become cheaper, and discourages imports as they become more expensive. However, within a currency area, that's not a simple task. For example, an external imbalance that France may have had with its trading partners within Europe before the creation of the Eurozone becomes impossible to address with this mechanism of devaluing one's currency today, as many of France's European trading partners now share the same currency as France. If the European Central Bank lowered rates in an attempt to weaken the euro, well, the real exchange rate between France and Germany hasn't actually changed. So, what is a country like France to do? Well, since France can't make its products more competitive relative to others of the same currency union through adjusting the exchange rate, what it can do is experiencing a reduction in prices within the country, as to alter the real exchange rate. This would result in goods becoming cheaper and more competitive relative to everyone, both its Eurozone neighbours and trading partners outside the Eurozone. This mechanism is known as internal devaluation, and from a purely economic standpoint, it makes sense. However, if you have never heard before, let me be the first to tell you. There is more to internal devaluation than decreasing prices until exports are cheap and economy go boom. There is, of course, a social aspect. So, the idea from some advocates of the euro to combat an external imbalance is the following. As a country begins a process of internal devaluation to address an external imbalance it has, falling prices will result in employees being paid less, and therefore being incapable of purchasing as much as before from all markets across the Eurozone and outside of the Eurozone. This would reduce imports. This reduction in consumption will result in an increase in unemployment, which through market forces was thought to reduce wages as more labour competes for fewer jobs. This would make the production of exports cheaper and competitive, which would then become the driving force of the economy and eventually increase employment. Make sense? Good. But this process is painful and would not take 6 to 18 months. Rather, this process would take many, many years, perhaps even a decade. And let's not forget, in the meantime, people would suffer a sustained period of unemployment would ruin lives. At a national level, fewer people would be able to access healthcare. Fewer young people would be able to access education and training programs to get into employment. And with the convergence criteria in the Eurozone stating that governments cannot run a public budget deficit greater than 3% of GDP, any money that the government does have access to fight these social issues, which from an economic point of view have a negative impact on future growth, may come from budgets focused on public investments into infrastructure or education that therefore will damage future economic growth. And if this series of events isn't enough to already reconsider the idea of internal devaluation within the Eurozone, then we also have to add to the mix the increased flexibility that exists for professionals in the Eurozone today. Because professional workers who have a tendency to be proficient in English and have in-demand skills within the economy will be attracted by much bigger paychecks and benefits in other parts of the Eurozone, resulting in the very human capital needed within a struggling economy to get it growing again, moving to other markets, as within the Eurozone, getting a job in Germany or the Netherlands as a Greek or Italian is significantly easier than coming from a non-EU country. No visa required. This has been the reality of those countries that have suffered worse in the Eurozone crisis. And although unemployment has been falling in the last decade in Greece, Spain, Italy and Portugal, scars from the crisis have not gone. Employment levels are frighteningly low, and many professionals remain in employment centres elsewhere in the Eurozone. Think Paris, Munich, Amsterdam, Frankfurt and Berlin, cities that have seen professional job growth continuously meet new highs, with companies poaching professionals from underperforming economies in Europe's south. So, what does this all mean? Is there a solution that does not result in the movement of so-called high-skilled professional human capital from southern to northern Europe? Well, this is one of many videos I plan to make about the Eurozone that will slowly answer all these questions on a topic that is very complex. So make sure to subscribe. So, the Eurozone's performance can be considered a failure in many ways. Even today, before the COVID crisis, we saw Greece, Spain and Italy with low employment rates, high youth unemployment rates and low levels of inflation. While in the very same monetary union, we saw the Netherlands and Germany experiencing higher levels of inflation with very low levels of unemployment. If you were the president of the ECB, how would you react? While there are many cases where the euro has served a national economy well, there is little that people can argue to say that the euro has been an overall net positive for all countries that are part of the Eurozone. Personally, I don't think the Eurozone has been a massive success. I side more with the idea that it has been a net negative for all Eurozone members. But I don't believe that it is doomed. There are solutions to its troubles, to fix its structure, and I will address in future videos. But all these solutions require a more united Europe that must have pan-European political backing. Hi everyone, thanks for watching today's video. If this topic interests you, then I strongly recommend you read the book The Euro, written by Joseph E. Stiglitz, a Nobel Prize winner. He goes into much more detail throughout the book and explains it much better than I can. You can find the book through a link in the description below. Also, let me know what you think about the euro. Do you think its problems will ever be fixed? Also, please check out the channel support box below in the description and like this video and subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye.